So starting with the new topic, which is the basic concepts of sampling, and here is the flow. So what is sampling? Suppose we want to know or estimate the characteristics of a larger population, but it is not possible to study or make inferences about the entire population because of its bigger size. So what we do, we select a small group or subset of data from that larger population, and this small group work as the representative of that larger population, and then we study the characteristics to make inferences. We'll study that small group and its characteristics to make inferences about that larger population. This process is known as sampling. So now what are the types? So the very first is random sampling. As the name itself suggests, that the selection will be completely random, and thus every member of that population that we have selected will have an equal chance of being selected. So this basically help to minimize the bias, any sort of that is why random sampling is being used. Now this random sampling is further divided into two parts, which is a simple random sampling and the systematic sampling, random sampling. In the simple one, each individual is chosen independently or randomly at a random scale, whereas in systematic random sampling, a starting point will be chosen, and that starting point will be chosen at random, and then after it every fixed or kth or nth element is selected. So basically the nature is random here, but the method of choosing is little in a system. That's why it's called systematic random sampling. So here in this picture, that random sampling is being explained with this with the help of this picture. Here the people or element are being numbered so as to make you understand in a better manner. So here we can see that when we are collecting the sample, we have taken one person from the first row, which is number 2, and then we have taken another person from second row, which is number 5. And for the rest 2, we have taken the person with number 8 and number 10 from the third row. So basically we have taken one person from first row, 2 person from second row, and 1 person again from third row. So this shows that the selection is completely random in nature. The further 2 are stratified and cluster sampling, and the name is given because of the nature of the subgroup or the data which is collected for sampling. Like in stratified sampling, the population is divided into different subgroups, where these subgroups are also known as strata, and that is why it is known as stratified sampling. And this subgroup is kind of subgroup that shares certain specific characteristics, and then random samples are being taken from these stratas or subgroups. Whereas in cluster sampling, the groups are known as clusters. The population is divided into different clusters or the groups, and some of which are randomly selected. And then the data is collected from each member or every member of the chosen clusters or the group. So now we can see this in the picture, where the first part is the stratified sampling part, where you can see the strata or the group has been formed in a particular manner, where the first element, number 2, is been taken from second row, whereas the second element, number 10, is been taken from the first row. The third element, which is number 8, has been taken from third row, and number 5, which is the fourth element, taken from fourth row. So approximately one element has been taken from each row, and now this forms a strata, which is further studied to take out the characteristics. In the other picture showing the cluster sampling, you can see that the larger population is being divided into 6 clusters, and sample of 2 clusters are being selected, where the sample consists of 2 clusters which are selected out of these 6 clusters. The first is the cluster having 2 numbers or elements, 5 and 6, and the other one is having the 2 elements, 11 and 12. So these 2 clusters are being selected as sample. Further, under the types of sampling, the 2 other comes, which are convenience and quota sampling. So convenience sampling, as the name suggests, here the sample is not taken randomly, rather it's based on the access or the convenience to the population from which the sample is being taken out. But this might result in certain biases if there comes an opportunity of it. Whereas in quota sampling, the researcher ensures that the sample represents certain characteristics of the population by selecting participants based on predefined quotas. So here is the picture showing the two kinds, where the convenience sampling, as you can see, that the person can select anyone based on how much the access a researcher has to the person whom he wants to select for the sample. So it is basically the convenience sampling, and not an order is defined. Whereas in quota sampling, we can see that the quota or the category is defined as that the researcher needs a male above the age of 20. So we can see that it can be easily selected out of this entire population, where he in the first row category wise, accordingly the 3 people are being selected for the sample who are the male above 20 out of the entire population. And since the quota has been defined here, that's why it's known as quota sampling. Now let's understand why we need sampling. So very firstly, it's quite cost efficient, because here we are studying only a small group of people, rather studying the entire bigger huge population, which would have involved a lot of bigger amount of cost. So it's cost efficient, then it's time efficient also, because for the same reason that if we are studying a smaller sample than a huge population, which would have involved lot of data collection and lot more longer analysis. Then if inferences also can be drawn out of that sample, and so we can understand or even predict the further nature or the characteristic of that broader population. So now that we have understood what is sampling, what are the types, and what is the reason, what is the importance, now let's quickly go through the key elements. So there are a few key elements and the terms which are oftenly used in sampling, like population, which is the entire group that we want to study, as I've been using this word very often. Then the sample, now we know that it is that subset or the group that we select to study out of that entire population. Sampling error is basically the difference between the sample statistic and the true population parameters, which occurs due to random nature of sampling. So it's a form of error that arises due to certain reasons that makes the observation deviate from the original. The next is the sample size, which is the number of individuals or item that we have taken in the sample to study. Generally, larger sample size lead to more accurate estimates, because they do combine of more of the characteristics that makes it is easier or accurate to study the larger population. So in the conclusion, we can say that sampling is crucial for ensuring the reliability and validity of research findings, and thus proper sampling techniques should be applied so that we can avoid any sort of error or bias. That also increases the applicability of the results. Thus, in the end, we can only say that the purpose of sampling arises when we are interested in learning about larger group of people with something common in research. The group we are interested in is called as the target population, but because of its huge nature, it's impossible to study each and every person. And here the sampling helps, because here, as we all know, that we take out a subgroup or sample and study it for knowing the characteristic of that larger population. So this is the main purpose. Okay, thanks.